So I'm a business student, and I'm a business student who's studying finance, which means that I just dove into my first foray into the job market. I was doing tens, if not hundreds of applications every single day. I was on networking calls, and of course, I was receiving tons and tons of rejections. But because I'm so type A, I made sure to prepare a plan B for what would happen if I didn't get the offer. And luckily for me, I was able to secure the offer, and you can watch the videos on how I'm doing that either on the channel already or in the future. But it's really important to figure out, what do you do if you don't get the offer? What do you do if you're not into the internship pipeline that's going to give you that six-figure paying job in the future? I mean, for some of these entry-level jobs, they want you to have 3 to 5 years of experience. And if you're new, whether you're a sophomore or a freshman, you may not have worked at all. And so in this video, we're going to talk about 5 different things that you can do over the summer or while you're still in school to build your experience and build out your resume, so that when the time does come around for you to recruit again, you will not only have a fully fledged resume, but also tons of different topics you can talk about for different projects you've completed, people you've worked for, or things that you've done that will qualify as experience either on LinkedIn or on that resume. So let's get into the video. The first tip we're going to talk about today is actually just applying for an externship. An externship is essentially when companies don't want to pay interns, and so instead they partner with another company to not only get their work done for them, but also give you experience. It's really a win-win scenario, except for the fact that you're not getting paid. But honestly, it is really good to build experience and say that you worked for accredited companies, because you can actually apply these to your resume and to your LinkedIn. And on top of that, sometimes they will actually hire their top externs to come and intern in the next upcoming internship cycle. So where do you find these externships? The main place to find an externship is actually on extern.com. Extern is the leader in best, and this is not sponsored in any way, shape, or form, but they literally solely provide externships. I've seen Dr. Dre partner with them, and I actually completed an externship with the company called Happy Sneeze, and they actually ended up taking one of the people who were in that externship cycle. These are real companies that are outsourcing work, and you will have to complete projects to actually complete the externship. Some of these externships are paid, and they offer $500 to $2,000 stipends, at least from what I've seen, but most of these are unpaid. The best way to get in is just to apply, and apply early, put your name in, and they actually try to accept as many people as possible to give opportunities for people who don't have an internship. Alternatively, if you don't get into extern.com for any reason, or maybe the fact that you just missed the cycle, you can still do externships on Forage and Paragon. Essentially, these are simulator sites, and so you go on and pretend that you are working a day in the life. A lot of top investment banking firms, finance firms, and business companies actually will host these Forage and Paragon simulations to see whether or not you are a good fit. I've actually had to take a couple of quizzes that are related to some of the simulations that they've had, and it's always a plus to say that I took 8 to 12 hours out of my life to complete the simulation that your team spent so many hours working on. You can do all of these for free, and all of these are very easy and accessible to find, especially if you have a business email. And so if you do this, you can add these to your resume as different projects you completed, or if you have an externship, you can solely say I was an extern for this company, and you really don't have to go through the whole vetting process like you would if you work for a real internship. But the thing about externships is that you don't always get the offer. You still have to apply, they still vet you, and sometimes they still are looking for people with experience, whether or not you actually are working for the company. What do you do if you don't get accepted into that externship? Well, you can actually start with a project. And no, this project doesn't need to go viral. You don't need to start a business. You don't need to do anything huge. But it can be anything from building a code that does a specific process, working on a brand strategy or design, building a website from scratch, or even anything that you're so pleased to do. I mean, some of the projects I've seen have been doing research into a different industry or a marketing topic that someone really likes, all the way down to building a financial forecast for a building that you really love. Regardless of what option you choose, doing and completing a project is a surefire way to get some experience on your resume and also on your LinkedIn. Not only does it give you LinkedIn posts that you can make, but there's a project section dedicated to people who actually are self-starters. And you've heard that keyword a lot, because self-starters is a really important term when you're recruiting. So if you can complete a project, it shows to employers that you are someone who will do something without getting paid for it, and you will complete that thing without getting paid for it. No, we don't want to work for people for free, but people love have to see that you have a passion about something and you are able to act on that passion and complete that passion. Whether that be on social media or through code or some type of STEM research that you're interested in, doing a project and completing that project shows that you have an interest that goes beyond just getting a job and just making money. If you are going the project route, you need to make sure that you complete whatever project it is. So if your plan was to build a social media account with 10,000 followers over the summer, then by the end of the summer, it needs to have 10,000 followers. It also needs to have some type of proof or evidence that you've actually completed it. So make sure that you're taking pictures of your designs, you're taking pictures of the website up and running, and all of the details in between. These help you build a portfolio, which we'll talk about a little bit later, but a portfolio allows you to actually advertise yourself and show proof that you've completed a project. It's very easy to say, I did this, but if you don't have any evidence and you don't have an employer, it very easily can be passed off as something that you've made up. So as long as you're completing whatever project you set out on, you can add this to your resume, you can add it to LinkedIn, and of course you can talk about it in conversations with employers. So I would recommend, if I had to give my tip, if you were trying to recruit for finance, take on a finance project. If you are recruiting for computer engineering, take on a coding project, and etc., etc. Try to do a project that does not require a lot of money to do over the summer or a lot of time, but still relates to your field of interest, so that when it does come time to recruit and talk about why you're interested, you can say, I completed this project over the summer. But I get it. Some of you guys may have decided not to opt for an internship simply because you were busy with other things, and I get it. I am also a very busy person trying to balance managing my own business, content creation, and then maintaining my GPA. But I decided to ask the person I know is the best at trying to multitask and get things done. I'm asking my friend Trenton Sandler, who is a D1 athlete, a content creator, and he's also in the STEM field, which, like, overdoer alert, because what are we doing? But I felt like he would know what's best to do over your summers when you're not working, but you still want to work on that professional development.
I don't have time for internships with sports and content creation, but this summer I'm still working on me. I'm asking PTs to shadow when I can, I'm studying topics I'm interested in, and I even put together this book list that I'm gonna try to get through.
Honestly, that was a really good piece of advice, and that leads me to tip number 3. If you are not working on an externship, an internship, or a project purely because you just didn't have enough time to do all of those, then the next best option is to build a skill. There are tons of free skill building websites that you can use. For example, Coursera, LinkedIn, and even Google all offer free certifications that you can get online. All you have to do is enroll yourself. And if you use your .edu email, sometimes they give you exclusive offers or access to free courses that you wouldn't have gotten otherwise. And building a skill is not only good for proving that you can work and operate in the field of your choice, but it can actually lead to certifications. And these certifications not only help you land internships, land jobs, but they can also help you start your own business, which leads us to tip number 4. So maybe options 1, 2, and 3 aren't enough. You don't want to work for free, you don't want to start a project, and maybe you have all the skills that, you already need for what your industry is. What do you do now? Well, that leads us to tip number 4, and that is simply to start working as a freelancer. A lot of students are afraid to take that first step to starting their own business because they're afraid that they do not know enough to operate in the space. You're not going to magically accumulate all of this knowledge in 2 years after you graduate, so you might as well start now. You can start getting that experience, leverage some of the skills you have, and start getting paid. All you have to do is register on Fiverr and Upwork, both of which are free, and start collecting leads. And if you have any skills in marketing, design, or even coding, I bet you'll be able to find someone who would love to hire you. Those are all core skills that help operate businesses, and saying that you started your own business or your own side hustle is one of the biggest flexes you can have on a resume. Not only does it show that you are a self-starter and you're entrepreneurial and that you're taking, things head on, you're afraid to experience risk, but it also shows you that you know how businesses operate and how they create their margins. It's not that you're just working in a company company, but you've ran a company before, so you know what the best options are to cut costs. You are someone who is skilled in their field. Maybe you're a junior or a senior, you just didn't luck out on the internship process. Going into self-employment and working on Upwork, Fiverr, or even starting your own LLC and your own website are all perfect ways to get experience, and they still count. I would argue that aside from an internship at your dream company, working and operating a company that's in the same industry as your dream company is like on the same par, if not better, because they show, one, they get to buy out a competitor, but two, they also know that you know how their business works. Some of you guys are very dead set on working at a specific company, and so you're wondering if there's any steps you can take to actually get there and actually get the company and the offer you deserve. And that is leading me to the last tip of the day, which is cold emailing, cold calling, and actually just showing up and knocking on people's doors. You'd be surprised how many times people get offers or opportunities simply by calling local businesses. But before we dive into this, I want to let you know that there are 3 different types of cold emailing, cold calling, and actually doing outreach to companies in whatever field that you're in. It's really important, firstly, that you figure out whether you're going to tap a national level or a local level, a big company or a small company. Some people have decided that they are actually looking for employment. They do not want connections, they do not want good insights, they want a job. The best thing you can do if this is you is actually reach out on a local level. Go knock on those mom and pop's doors, call the local owners, see if you have a family firm or a family office on the corner, reach out to the business owners in your area. 9 times out of 10, they're looking for someone who can do the extra work. Maybe it's not paid, or maybe it's not directly what you would like to be doing, but you can still say, I worked at a consultancy firm, I worked at a family office law firm, I worked at an accounting firm, etc. You can still say you've worked in this experience, and so as long as your bullet points are reflecting the work that you've done, it doesn't necessarily matter whether it was a name brand or if it was a small mom and pop. Especially if you are a sophomore or a freshman, it doesn't necessarily matter where you're working, it matters that you're working. But what if you're dead set at working at Goldman Sachs, Morgan Stanley, top banks, top firms? You are dead set in getting what you want. Well, you can start cold calling professionals. I recommend starting with your university alumni if you guys have a pretty robust alumni network. Some schools have strong alumni networks like the University of Michigan, but some schools do not. If you're lucky enough to have a school with a strong alumni network, start there. But if you're someone who's not as fortunate to have such a strong alumni network, hope is not lost. You can still cold call, it's just that your response rate is going to be significantly less. But that means that your emails have to be that much stronger if you want to still get that same response rate as someone who's in a business school or someone with a long alumni network. What you do with these cold emails is try to build relationships first. And I'm not saying go and look for relationships, because obviously Hinge and Tinder don't always work out. Don't go searching for a relationship. Let it happen organically. And that same thing goes for if you're trying to network. Reaching out to a professional that you actually find interesting will go 9 times better than reaching out to a professional because they look good on paper. Taking any advice from dating, it pretty much goes the same way. So with that being said, whether you're outreaching through your alumni or you're outreaching through just cold calling professionals that you find very interesting, either way you can ensure that you are making those connections. For me, it was the connections that I made over the summer of freshman year that really transformed the opportunities I was able to get my sophomore year because of the fact that I actually had the connections at the firms already. So even if you're not working on a skill or working on a project, just talking to people and showing up and showing interest, especially in the summertime when people have a little bit more time to chat, actually can prove to be a really good thing. So you've made it to the end of this video, which means that you should have at least 5 things you should be doing instead of wasting the summer. But if you want the too long to read version of what I talked about today, the first tip we talked about was actually applying to an externship. Whether that be through Paragon, Extern, or Forage, you can ensure that you are still actually working for a company without ever having to travel or leave your house. But if you are more actionable and not a virtual interface type of person, then you might actually like starting a project instead. The only thing you need to ensure is that this project is completed in the period that you have. So if you decide that this project is going to take 1 year, it needs to be completed by the end of the 1 year. If you are recruiting in the summertime, make sure that project is completed before you recruit so that you can add it to your resume, to your LinkedIn, and actually have posts that are dedicated to that project. And then shout out to Trang, who talked about learning a skill. Learning a skill skill is essential because you can start to build your certifications. Whether you're learning that skill through LinkedIn, through Google, or through Coursera, if you can not only learn the skill but provide proof that you know the skill, you can still add these to your LinkedIn and your resume to prove that you are certified and you are eligible to work in that field. Alternatively, if you are really good at what you do, you can just start to freelance. There are places like Fiverr and Upwork and even on Yelp where you can start and easily construct a side hustle advertising your business. If your project was going to be to start a social media account, I bet you there are about 10 people that would love to hire a social media manager, and your job would just be scroll on TikTok and make content, which you're getting paid for it, and I bet you're doing that anyways. And last but not least, if you are new to the industry or just still trying to learn about what to do, you can cold email professionals. Actually, this is what I did my freshman year, even though I had an internship, and I spent my entire summer talking to wealth management people, finance people, consulting people, marketing people, and I was cold emailing. And you never know, because cold emails can turn into an opportunity very quick, especially if they need an intern, they run their business themselves, or if they really like you, they can put in a good word, which can turn into a referral later down the line. But thank you so much for watching today, and hopefully these tips were helpful and things you haven't considered. And if you want more college tips and advice about career readiness, day-to-day, or managing a busy schedule, this is the channel for you. But my name is Kayla, and I will talk to you guys all next time. Bye, everyone.